Bullying, particularly the difficult aspect of bullying is that it is not treated the way it should be. So as a parent, now I need to give my child certain skills to be able to deal with this, because this is a life challenge. This is going to come their way. I need to give them the skills to navigate this.
Welcome to another episode of CC Talkies. Today we have with us Mimansa Singh Tanwar. She is a lead clinical psychologist at Fortis Healthcare, and she's also heading the Fortis School Mental Health Program. And today we are discussing a very relevant topic to both children and parents alike, that is bullying. Welcome, Mimansa. So happy to have you here with us. How are you?
Thank you so much, Rupal. Pleasure to be here and interacting with you on this amazing platform.
Thank you so much.
Great channel that you've opened for all the parents and young children.
Yes.
I've been excited myself.
Thanks for saying that, Mimansa, especially coming from you, because you deal with children almost on an everyday basis, especially when you run the school mental health program as well. And I think today's topic itself is such a relevant and such a common topic about bullying, especially with children. And I wanted to ask you right away, like the very first question is that how often do you see cases of bullying in your practice? And like both older and younger children alike?
So bullying is one of the most common experiences that any child goes through in school. In fact, if we look at some of the statistics, and which changes, but we would see somewhere around 50% of children going through some form of bullying experience in their school years. And so one can see the kind of wide range of bullying experiences that one may go through, which may start with something as small as teasing by friends, and it could also go on to different levels at the same time. Bullying, particularly the difficult aspect of bullying is that it is not treated the way it should be. The intervention of how and what should happen when somebody is getting bullied and how it needs to be talked about in school, the awareness needs to happen. That somewhere is still, there is a gap over there. And which is why, even as an adult, many times when people talk to us, there is some form of bullying or the other that would have happened during the school years. For someone, it may be mild, may not have, they may not have realized how it may have impacted them because it was a mild experience. But for others, it would lead a long-term impact on their personality. So yes, common, worrisome, can be handled at the right time if we actually pay the attention to it.
That's very positive. You're absolutely correct. I think most of the time the problem is not with the act itself, but the aftermath of the act, how it has been treated, what kind of a space have we enabled for both, the child who has bullied and the child who has been bullied. So I will come, basically I want to introduce the whole idea of this when you're talking about bullying, especially in young children. I think that is very worrisome because parents get immediately affected. They get triggered by their own personal experiences in school that they had. And second, there's a lot of shaming around this act, especially, both there's victim shaming from the child who is being bullied and the child who is bullying. So let's say, I think it starts pretty much as soon as kindergarten, if I'm not wrong, say 5-6 years, right? But do you think it's okay at that age for a child to be called a bully when they are hitting other children?
Well, that's a very important question. So one, we need to understand the subtlety of what a bullying behavior when it starts at a young age and how it grows on where one understands that this is a bullying behavior. Now, for young children, it's merely about teasing each other, trying to find their own social space, connectedness. In that, they may sometimes unknowingly say certain things, exclude a certain friend because there is another friend who wants something, who wants to do something. So is somewhere attracting that friend to with certain means, using certain things that you come and talk to me, and in that exclusion can happen. Now, name calling will not certainly help us in really resolving the situation. So calling one child a bully, other the victim, where this is also a normal part of their growing up. This is something developmentally you would see children do go through when it comes to peer relationships. So you do form peer relations by understanding the dynamics slowly and steadily. So this is a way of you understanding the dynamics, and you also are trying to understand what is okay and what is not okay. So when a child has come to you talking to you about a certain experience, as a parent, no doubt we have our emotions, because obviously suddenly you recognize and you empathize with the isolation, the hurt that your child is going through at that point in time. And this is where one needs to first hear the entire experience. And the first thing that we need to do as a parent is validate the child's emotions. Just, reflecting on, yes, what you may be feeling, how this may be, and then just helping them understand what may actually be happening in that dynamic, and how, of course, it is going to hurt you. It's going to make you feel a certain way. So what is it that the child can do in terms of being able to talk to the friend? Because a parent may not always be able to intervene directly. As a young child, you may still go ahead and talk to a teacher. As they grow older, kids don't want their parents to come and talk to another friend of theirs who's bullying or teasing, or even a teacher or a didi for that matter.
No, that's true, because I personally experienced it with my child when he was 5. In fact, that whole experience of bullying led me to make this film called The Flyman that's running on our channel on Cornucopia Pictures. But even at that time, I remember when he came and told me about this child who was hitting at school. And when I was scripting this film, I took a very conscious decision of calling this child Bull Boy, gave him a fictional character name. And I did not call him Bully, because I did not feel that that was the right way to deal with it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt that at that age, at that time, my son was 5, and same for the other child who was hitting him. But at that age, they are literally exploring with power dynamic. They're testing their own boundaries. They're testing what happens when I do this. It's literally like a fun game for them, that if I hit this child and I get a reaction, that's the small way of power dynamic that they are testing, and their boundaries, and how they're testing their strength, and what is the consequences of their actions, which is slowly just beginning to go into their minds. Is that correct? And is there something?
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right on that. Like I said, it's part of their growing up. They are going to test their boundaries and the other person's boundary as well.
Yeah.
They're also going to test that how much power do they have, because this is also part of, again, a group dynamic, a peer dynamic, understanding oneself, even also trying to understand how much, social and peer connectedness and attraction can I build in through this power dynamic, and various other things that children go through. So it is a form of play at a young age that is there for them. And this is where we need to start talking about empathy. I think empathy is not something that we talk about from a very young age. It's something that we still struggle to talk with even adults around us. Yeah. We are not very good empathizers, because even if we may say, I understand, but then again, an advice comes in. So using empathy, building empathy, and that requires a lot of active listening as parents. So even starting at a young age, before you even jump on to intervening of what you could have done and how this is wrong, and why is this friend of yours doing it, he or she should not be doing it, this is so wrong, I'm going to go and talk to the teacher and I'm going to complain. Pause.
Yeah.
As a parent, we need to really
pause.
Work on our
I love that term, active listening, because I think especially parents need to learn it far more than anyone else, right? Because like you rightly said, we jump to conclusions so quickly, especially when it's about our child, and rightly so, of course. I think as long as we recognize that this is what our trigger is, it may not be the child's trigger, but immediately jumping to conclusions and going to war with anyone just because our child is involved may not be the best solution. I remember when I was having that discussion with my child, I was told by my son, who was 5, that it's my fight. I am the one who's there alone in that playground. And that hit me very hard, that that's true. Whatever I tell him that you should do this, you should do that, is not going to work. Because ultimately that solution has to come from within. So how can parents actively enable their children who are at the receiving end of any kind of hitting or teasing?
So I'm going to, for a moment, take you through your emotions as a parent and even a child's emotion, because you're actually mirroring that. So when a child is talking about it, the child is actually saying how helpless, powerless I feel, because this is a close friend who's doing this to me and it's really hurting me. And I'm feeling hurt, pain, and anger at the same time. Now, nowhere in the world you would not find a parent feeling emotionally charged by hearing that when your child is actually narrating a story like this. So as a parent, what is it that you go through? You yourself go through feelings of helplessness, anger. You want to rescue your child from that emotion immediately. You want to do something to rescue your child. And you also feel in certain moments, then you recognize also the feeling of powerlessness, because you do at some point in time recognize that I can't actively do something because it may also worsen the situation until unless the situation is really worse and yes, now I need to act. So as a parent, now I need to give my child certain skills to be able to deal with this, because this is a life challenge. This is going to come their way. I need to give them the skills to navigate this. So the first thing is that the child needs to feel like an empty vessel when they come and talk to you, which means all you do is just hear it out. You just hear it out, and or you just validate it either by saying, yes, I understand, it's so hurtful and it's painful, or you just give them a hug and you say, I'm so sorry you have to go through this. So this is you validating with the child, and that in itself gives them a sense of relief. Like there's a certain relief because that emotional bubble, the balloon, just suddenly goes, where you can now fill in something back.
Right.
And this is your time to fill something back, and which is like your positive emotions, what the child can do in a situation like that. So hear the entire story out multiple times, where all it happens, how does it go, what the child has already been doing to sort of work around it with the friend, because sometimes they do actually try to make a point, but the friend is just so pushy, or the peer is just so pushy that they're finding it difficult to put it across. So again, over there, reassuring that what you're doing is actually correct. All you need to do is maybe just keep doing it till the time your friend gets it. So the consistent pushing, your reassurance, your comfort is what is going to help. Second, for some children who are very sensitive and anxious, who begin to start feeling that they're withdrawing and they're taking more, and they're maybe having their emotional, reactions, crying, avoiding school, avoiding bus, because these are the places where bullying actually happens, avoiding playground. Over here, we need to start giving children some means of how to deal with the child who's doing this, which means maybe something as simple as role playing. So you become that child who's doing this. You pick up a script and you say, okay, let's play this out. You say exactly what you say, and I will be that child who does this, and let's try and do this. And you do this and you practice it time and again, because this somewhere helps the child feel that they have something that they in advance to be able to next time go and work it out. And they may not be immediately able to do it every time. So you have to, again, give them time and space and be patient for them to keep applying this time and again. But this is how you're also teaching them how to be assertive.
Right. And that's
assertiveness,
a life lesson. I mean, it's not just in the case of bullying, it will be in case of any drawing of boundaries as they grow further, right?
Absolutely.
But what is the point then, Mimansa, that parents should actually physically intervene? Like, what is the point, what is the cue for them that now the water has, sort of gone overboard?
So when you recognize that the child is showing behavioral changes, which are to the extent that it is begin to impact their academics, it has begun to impact their emotions, they're avoiding social situations now, they don't want to go to school, they don't want to go and face their peers, their friends, and it has started to psychologically impact them. You've tried, they have tried, but it's not working out. The child may also sometimes show signs of anxiety, sadness, all these difficulty sleeping. So these are some signs for you to recognize. Now, this is the time for you to intervene. And at the same time, even safety. When you recognize that your child's safety is somewhere getting compromised or may get compromised, that's where you need to intervene. You need to talk to the school. You need to perhaps also take your child to a counselor if it is required, to a psychologist, a mental health practitioner, to start working and helping the child deal with that.
That's good advice. So I also wanted to know, what are the steps that schools can take and educators can take, or teachers who are physically present in the playground while it's happening, you know, or in the classroom, wherever it's happening, since they are the first point of contact for the child?
True. So we have a bully to buddy intervention program that we do. It's like an awareness come intervention program that we've been doing with schools, and schools have actually been doing this with us, where we start with building awareness amongst peers, students, teachers, educators, even staff for that matter, and parents, because they all need to be involved and know what bullying is. It's not merely just an experience that comes and goes in your life. It has a lifelong impact. It can impact the child's personality. It can create signs and symptoms of anxiety, depression, even PTSD in some ways. So this is a life-altering experience that the child may go through depending upon the kind of experience that they go through. So awareness building. And then from there, what is the school which is actively doing when they recognize that there is a bullying experience, an episode that has happened? What do they need to do? They need to also record it. They need to involve both the parents. They need to work with both the children, the one who's getting bullied and the one who is bullying, because even the child who's bullying certainly has some kind of a self-esteem issue, because we need to understand, why would a child or anyone continue to want to do that, find some sense of pleasure or feeling powerful by putting somebody down? This certainly talks about that there is something related to self-esteem which is low, that needs to be worked upon. And it could also be that the child who's bullying might have also gone through similar experiences in his or her life, because either the elder sibling is doing it, or maybe other peers in the classroom, or even parents. Yes, the way they, as parents, we tend to be more authoritarian and authoritative in our approach. That could also be one of the ways of how the child is directing that aggression onto someone to feel powerful.
In fact, that brings me to an interesting point. Since we always focus on the child who's being bullied, I also want to focus, what is advice for parents whose child is the one who's hitting other children? Because I think for most parents, that's a bigger nightmare.
It may be difficult for you to acknowledge and accept that this might be happening and that your child may be doing it. But if you are getting repeated feedbacks, complaints, hear it out and give it a thought that, yes, there is something that may be happening. Look at it in a way that this is a behavior that requires some intervention, because it's an anger which is untreated. And anger is an emotion is fine, but when it begins to come in the form of behavior, where it is also started to trouble others around them, it's somewhere going to also impact their ability to sustain good relationships, good social relationships in their own life. So even your child, for that matter, requires some help over there. Your child is struggling with something. So rather than seeing this as a label on your child and you wanting to just deny this, that my child can't do this, accept, acknowledge, and work with it.
Right. Again, so active listening, we come back to that. Active listening to from parents of both the children, right? And I think some sort of negative behavior can be that parents themselves can be in denial for the longest time. They don't want to accept this behavior because perhaps they themselves have so much trauma to deal with, or perhaps their own behavior, that they will perhaps have to look into the mirror and recognize where they have perhaps done some missteps which could have caused something like this. Tell me one thing, we've also noticed in so many cases that the child who has been bullied, like you said, the child who's bullying could have gone through bullying themselves. While I know that that may not be the direct case for each child who has gone through bullying, but so many children who have been bullied immediately pass it on. You know, the moment they discover their power, especially very young children, when they discover their power, suddenly they recognize, oh, my actions have the same effect. I can scare other people too, just like I was being scared. And they become bullies themselves. So, how to stop that chain from sort of passing on?
So it starts with awareness, and school is the place where we need to really build that awareness, because children are there for 13 years. They actually experience a lot of these small nuances of their life more in school and at home, more in the playground. So these are some of the key areas where children actually go and experience a lot of these social dynamics. So school needs to play an active role in continuing to build the awareness which is needed around bullying, and parents also need to talk about it. I think not every information that goes from the parent has to be only when it happens. When you hear some of these things, you can also talk about just simply as a prevention. What is empathy? How do you support a friend who's getting, who's struggling with something? So these are also certain things that as parents we can talk about, and practice assertiveness with them in day-to-day life as well. I think sometimes children do want to assert themselves by saying a no, and as a parent we want to assert our yes back on them in certain situations where we may even recognize that fine, it's not such a big deal, they can say a no to this.
True. We can't expect children to not be assertive at home and then suddenly be assertive at school when where it's needed, or in any public place, right? So tell me, Mimansa, how helpful can therapy be to a child, to both children, the child who has been bullying and the child who has been bullied?
Quite helpful, specifically when you recognize this is a chain. A child is constantly getting into an aggressive behavior, and managing anger is becoming difficult. It's impacting their relationships. And you may also see in some way or the other that even the child who is bullying may also have some other difficulties. It could be academic difficulties. It could be not being able to control one's own emotions difficulty. It could also be that they may be lagging some social skills. So there could be various things that child may be going through. So again, intervention helps over there, building emotional regulation, how to manage one's emotion, how to express anger in a right way, how to learn to develop social skills, how to maintain a friendship, how to build perspective, empathy again, that comes over there. How do you feel? How do they feel? That kind of a conversation, but in a much more scientific way is what is going to help the child. Similarly, with the child who is being bullied would go through a lot of low self-esteem, low confidence, because they've been shown down time and again. So working on their self-confidence and their skills, specifically learning to say no, standing up for themselves, these are some of the skills that one may work on. And I do feel one thing that I would want to add, which is the role of the bystander over here. A lot, many times as a parent, you will also find your child narrating a story of two friends of theirs fighting and getting into this kind of a behavior. And as a parent, we feel as long as it's not my child who's either of them, I can just hear and enjoy the story. So over there, try and help your child to understand what they can do in terms of support. Right. They can also be a peer support, because when we talk about bullying, bystander intervention actually has a big role to play. And when we talk about bully to buddy in our programs, we talk about the role of peer support, because it's happening amongst friends. So if one friend, two friends, they stand up to the child and say, we are with you, don't worry, and try and stop and intervene as well. A lot, many times you would see that episode just ends over there in some way or the other, or may say that, I am going to take you to the teacher and I'm going to talk about this and still support you. So even other kids have a role to play as a peer support and a friend.
That's fabulous insight. I think peer support, because that's not talked about at all. I think partly because the child who's being bullied, there's so much shaming around all of this, around therapy, around the term bullying itself and being bullied. I think first of all, perhaps we should just drop these labels. That would help us sort of in moving forward, at least with this narrative where we keep getting stuck at again and again. I forgot to ask one question. I've seen noticed this in a lot of parents whose child is being bullied. They advise their child immediately to hit back. If someone's hitting you, you hit back. Well, I am not judging that piece of advice, but I also feel it can be wrong at the level, because if the child could hit back, they would have already done it. What is your take on that?
See, as parents, we may give our ways of talking about it and helping the child in different ways. And these are also certain advices and suggestions which may be given to us in some way or the other. It's like, how it also passes on. I think before jumping onto an advice, you check on the child, what all the child has already done. Try to sort of, protect themselves in a situation like this. And then work around collaboratively what they think and what you think is going to be right, than jumping onto an immediate solution. Oh, you've gotten hit, you do that back. Because that's not going to resolve anything. It's not building empathy. If our larger purpose in society is to actually talk about compassion and empathy, we are actually going in the opposite direction then.
Yeah.
As parents, we also talk about, how we want to build a society which is safe, which is kind, where our children enjoy going.
Interesting, because unfortunately we expect that from other people, but we are not willing to start it at our level, right? We expect kindness from others, but we forget that perhaps we are the ones who could start that circle of kindness, and hopefully from then on it can be passed. The fact that you said storytelling can be such a great way to begin the process, right from day one. We don't have to wait for the child to be bullied or for the child to bully. And I completely believe in that. And that is why we've also started the channel Cornucopia Pictures. And our first film, The Flyman, deals with this issue of bullying, but in a light-hearted way. And I would urge educators and parents to use that film as a starting point, because it's not a triggering film. You can use it as a starting point, which looks at bullying in a light-hearted manner, and then get into that whole narrative with your child if your child's going through something like that. So yes, thank you very much, Mimansa. It was absolutely wonderful. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rupert. Pleasure. Thank you.